Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody!
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire, misunderstood. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city sand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices like the park. Fans drift in jerseys, legacy bold. The Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline gleams, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. Ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Amazing Mets pregame show right here on the channel and on X. And after an off day, we got 12 games to go in a very, very important series for our New York Mets. And we got the duo back together. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, it's been a while since I've been on. I apologize to everybody about, the lack of content, the lack of streams. I'm actually just getting over being sick and I'm still feeling some remnants of it. So you all take care of yourselves out there. It's a cruel world, I'll say that. And nothing more cruel for us Mets fans than having to watch this roller coaster of a season, especially as of the last few months. But as crazy as it seems and as crazy as it sounds, this team somehow, some way is still in control of their own playoff destiny, and it starts tonight. And we've been saying this time and time again. This is a crucial series. This is a crucial series. That's a crucial series. I mean, we've delayed the inevitable, but with 12 games remaining, the time is now. And the Padres, this is a team that has given the Mets perpetual problems over the past couple of years, Rob. It's not going to be easy. So we're here to break it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, they don't have no room for error anymore. 12 games is 12 games. I mean, if you have a bad stretch, you're going to be out of the playoffs. And, they only been out of the playoffs all year for a few hours the other day. And then they ended up gaining a full game over the course of 2 days based on, the Giants getting cooled off a little bit, the Reds cooling off. The Diamondbacks still playing pretty decent as they're a game and a half behind the Mets right now. And the Giants are 2 games along with the Reds. But right now, look, it's all about the Mets taking care of their own business. And that's the biggest concern that we all have, right? We can care less about what the other teams do because if the Mets win, it doesn't matter. And, the Padres are coming into town. We know the struggles the Mets have with the Padres over the last couple of seasons. But the Padres, with all the moves they made at the deadline, aren't playing very well either. And, the Dodgers haven't looked good. The Giants, after their 10-game winning streak, has gone on a little bit of a cold streak now. And they haven't played as well. I mean, they've been getting beat down as well. But when it comes to the Padres, they haven't played well either. And the Mets need to step up here. I know the combination of Clay Holmes and Sean Manaea tonight, we'll definitely get into that. And they finally made the move with Manaea going to the bullpen. It took too long, but eventually they already did it. But, what are your thoughts on these last 12 games in general when it comes to this, starting with this Padres series? Like, do you have a number that you think they need to win to be comfortably in the playoffs? Because I mean, they can win what if they go 12-0, like that's crazy, but that's what 89 wins, if I'm not mistaken, right? That's the correct math. Yeah, 89 wins. All right, that's probably not going to happen. But what is a number that you say will get us into the playoff as a third wild card with these 12 games?
I mean, I would say I would hope at the very minimum 7-5 gets it done. That might be a little bit of wishful thinking, but then you take a look at some of the schedules that these teams have remaining, especially the Diamondbacks. They have the toughest road ahead of anybody, I would think, trying to get into the playoffs, and they're actually the closest ones, followed by the Reds and the Giants. And it's good that at least the Mets have the tiebreaker over the Giants, although this is a time where you look back at games, and I said it on the video that I released a couple of hours ago on my channel. These are the games, and this is the time where you look back at, those early season games against these teams, and you're like, damn, a couple of mistakes here and there. You clean that up, and you take the tiebreaker over all three of these teams instead of just one of the three, and that would make us feel a lot better with only a game and a half lead. So I would say 7-5 is probably the absolute bare minimum, but more realistically, I think 8-4, 9-3 gets it done a little bit more realistically. Like I said, with some of the schedules remaining, I know for the Diamondbacks in particular, it's kind of good for us right now, which is why we need to take advantage of the Diamondbacks and the Giants beating up on each other. But the Diamondbacks have to play the Phillies. I believe they got to play the Dodgers one more time, and I forgot exactly who else they play. I think it is the Padres. This Padres team, they've closed the season out again, so that's a really tough road for them. But I think 8-4. I agree with Ricardo in the chat. 8-4, and I can definitely see what Nelson is saying with 9-3 as well. Either of those gets it done, but even with these numbers that we're throwing out here, even 7-5, anything above 500 seems like a mountain to climb for this Mets team with the way they've been looking like the past, 8 to 9 games, especially against the Rangers and the Phillies. I mean, a handful of those games, I know that I didn't get to talk about it. I was away. By the way, congratulations to you. I was live and in person to see your Cowboys beat my Giants in overtime.
Well, the Giants lost that game. Not the Cowboys
Oh, we
didn't.
oh, we lost that ourselves. I mean, Russ throwing for 450 yards and still losing. I was which is partly why my voice is gone. I'm still recovering from that. But I was watching closely to that Texas Rangers series outside of the Jonah Tong debacle on Friday night. I mean, that middle game really pissed me off. The offense really didn't want to take the game away from the Rangers, and the bullpen, we all know how that happened, right? And so, take a look at the 1-0 loss to the Phillies. There's a handful of games, even in these last 7 games, that the Mets could have taken, and they're just kind of like, no, you take it. We don't want it. And that's the most infuriating part to me. There's no urgency. There's a lack of urgency, I should say, and the execution thereafter is following that lack of urgency. So, 8-4, a really roundabout way to express my frustrations. I'll say 8-4, but 9-3 sure would be nice.
Yeah, yesterday and a couple of days ago, I said 8-4 as well. I think that's a good number. That gives you to 85 wins, and I think that's probably a good number right there, where you can actually be a couple of games over 500, and you'll be in the playoffs, in my opinion. But you know what? As much as we talk about the third wild card, I know it's crazy to say because the inconsistencies of this Mets team, but we are facing a team that are 5 games in front of us, and you have a good week, you have a good series here. You could be talking about a second wild card. I know that's a lot to think about. We're just trying to survive a playoff spot, but that's not out of the question because the Padres have not looked good. And listen, I mean, crazier things have happened, and they, if I'm not mistaken, they might even play the Dodgers one more time as well. But we got to look at the tiebreakers as well when it comes into that, right? The Arizona Diamondbacks, we're tied with the season series with them, and then it goes to division record. If we end up tied with the Diamondbacks, they win it. Because as of right now, obviously, we still got 3 more games against the Marlins, so that can determine a little bit. And Arizona has a couple more games against Western teams and West teams, so it could determine. But right now, Arizona has the better division record in the NL West, so they would get the tiebreaker there. With the Reds, they have the tiebreaker against us, and we have the tiebreaker against the Giants. So we don't want to end up in a tiebreaker scenario because we don't need another last year. We already have no pitching, let alone, we got to use important pitchers for a game 163 if you need it, just to see what spot you're going to be in a playoff spot. And we don't need any of that or be out of the playoffs. We have no time for that at all. But since we haven't been on the show together, I wanted to get your thoughts on Jonah Tong because it's been a topic of conversation. He has not really looked. I mean, he had a very rough out in his last time out, And even before that, it was not great. It was okay. I'll say above average, but it was still we need more from these guys. Unfortunately, they don't deserve this type of pressure, but the Mets put them in this situation. So it's not blaming the kids. It's just is what it is. But what are your thoughts on Jonathan? Because I said that I don't believe he's ready yet. I think a third pitch is crucial to his success, and he really doesn't have that solidified confidence third pitch right now. And you can get away with that in the minors, with your changeup fastball, but his curveball slider is still in development. You can tell. And he had to throw that his last time out a little bit, and they were just sitting on that changeup because the fastball he couldn't throw for strikes. What are your thoughts on Jonah Tong? Like, I'm not sure if he's necessarily ready yet, and that's not a detriment to him. It's just the Mets' problem and what they did. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, you can't like we both said when we were talking about, these potential moves before they actually happened to call up, guys like Tong and Sproat, you cannot blame them regardless of what they do. I mean, they got put in the toughest of tough situations, and some of them are excelling. I think Brandon Sproat in particular is having a really good time over his first two starts, 6 innings apiece. He looks calm, cool, collected. We already know Nolan McLean is basically the ace of the staff in his short tenure as a New York Met over his first handful of starts. He looks absolutely electric. And Jonah Tong of the three has looked the worst, and he doesn't look ready. You're right. But and that's something that with the scouting report we were talking about. That's the difference between Jonah Tong and Brandon Sproat and Nolan McLean in particular, where Nolan McLean, you look at him and he has 5 or 6 different pitches that he is comfortable throwing at any given hitter in any given situation. And that was the one thing that I was talking about with you and also with Zach about Jonah Tong is that yeah, he technically has the third pitch. Maybe he even has the fourth pitch, but he's not going to throw it as confidently as Nolan McLean does all 5 or 6 of his pitches. And that's something that when you get to the next level, when you get to the highest level, they will, by process of elimination, pick up on that, especially through the second time through, which he didn't even get a chance to see in that Rangers start the last go round, unfortunately, giving up the 6 earned runs. But that's something that's going to have to be a continuous improvement for him because we know the scouting report and everybody, the experts of the people who watch these guys in the minor leagues and know about them a little bit more than us, Jonah Tong has the stuff in terms of the advanced metrics on his pitches, particularly his fastball and the spin rate. But he needs to develop a full arsenal to be considered a really good, viable starter throughout the longevity of his career. It's still very early. He's still very young. Nobody is going to, knock his whole entire career, minus maybe the panicked Mets fans about his developmental process. But I will say, I think that he's got one more start to show that he belongs in this rotation for the rest of September. I know nobody wants to hear it. I talked about it on my video a couple hours ago again as well. If you missed that, check it out. Links in the description down below before the game. Kodai Senga is doing really well. I think he earned some sort of honors of whatever in AAA, if that matters. It doesn't really matter. Nobody wants to hear this, but knowing the Mets, I would think that their game plan probably is see if Jonah Tong has it against the Padres. And the Mets really can't afford to do this, but I think they will because they've already committed to Kodai Senga figuring his stuff out in AAA. They'll give Tong one more shot. They've already moved Manaea to the bullpen, as you just mentioned a couple of minutes ago. And then if Tong doesn't have it, I think you have to at that point, and trust in and just hope that Kodai Senga has figured something out and call him back up to start in place of Tong the second go round. Again, no blame, no knock on Jonah Tong. I just don't think he is as ready, especially given the lack of that third, fourth pitch as a guy like Brandon Sproat and Nolan McLean, who are proving that, yeah, they probably do belong. I still think Brandon Sproat as well needs some polishing, but you could just tell he's a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more calm, cool, collected when he gets into some of those jams because he knows that he has to put away stuff right now, unlike Jonah Tong. So that's really the difference. That's the way that I assess the quote unquote three-headed monster and their production so far. And I think that this game 3, I think it's a matinee, 1:10 p.m. in this series against the Padres is really going to tell us a lot about the future, the 2025 future of Jonah Tong on the New York Mets in this rotation. And you know what? Maybe a bullpen gig for him is not out of the question. If they decide to move one of the veterans, I'm not really confident that they'll do that as opposed to just sending him back down. But you never know. Stranger things have happened. But I do think that this is his last go round in terms of proving himself in this rotation.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, the Mets put him in a very rough spot, and it is what it is. You know, we have to at least give him one more chance, and he's going to get it against the Padres, the last game of this series. But you know, when it comes to like Kodai Senga, and I'm glad you brought him up because I was going to bring him up next. We know the Mets are going to give him another chance, right? He's starting on Thursday, in the minors again. He'll probably pitch great because minor league hitting is not anywhere near major league hitting, and the Ghost Fork is going to fool a lot of hitters down there, like it did his first start. Just how it goes. So the numbers are not really the problem of what we're going to be looking at. It's going to be like, did he fix whatever he was trying to fix? Like, did he? Because we talked about this many times with Kodai Senga. He doesn't adjust. He throws what he throws. He throws that fork ball off the plate almost every single time. And he has a very straight fastball. He uses his other pitches, but when they're not swinging at that ghost fork pitch, he finds himself in a lot of trouble. And you hope that whatever he's doing down there, mechanically or whatever it is, it needs to work. It needs to be figured out so we can come back up here. Because you if Tong doesn't pitch well, you have to rely on Kodai Senga again, regardless of the situation, unfortunately, because you can't keep on throwing out a young kid over there and then say, oh, here's the playoffs. Good luck. You can't do that. You're going to kill the kid. So I'm not ready to do that just yet. But, you know, Kodai Senga, and I already said this, the Mets are going to bring him back up. He's going to either be pitching in the last game of the Chicago series or the first one or two games in the Miami series. That's where I think where he's lining up to possibly pitch. And you could piggyback him and Tong together if you wanted to. If you wanted to do it that way as well, like they doing today with Clay Holmes and Sean Manaea. But I don't know. I already thought about this pitching being the demise of this team, and I always thought they would sneak into the playoffs somehow, some way. I just like, I am not confident in this rotation or in this pitching in general to get us anywhere in the playoffs. But again, crazier things have happened. We don't know, right? We know how the crapshoot of the playoffs are nowadays. You know, you need one or two pitchers to get hot and you're in good shape. And if Nolan McLean is the guy that we see now in the playoffs, you need one other guy to step up. Because if you can have two pitchers that you can count on in your rotation, you got a really good chance of doing what you need to do in the playoffs. So, you know, it's a wait. Unfortunately for us, it's a wait and see approach, right? Other than McLean and, you know, somewhat Sproat, there's nobody that you can feel confident in a game. Even David Peterson, who goes tomorrow, there's not really much confidence going into it. You know, I don't know if you heard Will Simon say yesterday on the off day live on SNY. He said that, you know, because they asked him, you know, is David Peterson, you know, written in as one of the starters in the postseason? He says, I wouldn't do it because he's not a swing and miss type of guy. And that's interesting, you know. And again, we know Will Simon, he's really good at what he does. I was shocked when he said that. And Chris, I wanted to get your thoughts on that before we really get into this game right now. But what are your thoughts on that Will Simon said that he don't believe David Peterson is going to be written in as one of the starters in a wild card series because he don't have that swing and miss potential that some other pitcher might actually have that might fill his role?
I would be shocked if he's not, given the lack of other options, but the basis of what Will Salmon said is nothing different than what I've been saying this whole time about David Peterson, what we've been saying on these streams about David Peterson. We know he's not a swing and miss guy. We know that doesn't really play well to be a quote-unquote ace. If you're an ace, you can put hitters away whenever you want, and Nolan McLean is showing that he could be that for the New York Mets. But if it's not David Peterson, what's the other option? You probably are going to have I would imagine Kodai Senga be one of those pitchers, right? Nolan McLean is the other guy. And I think Kodai Senga has to prove something for him to be, you know, one of those guys in the top three in a wild card series. But let's say he does come back for the Cubs series. Let's just say he gets two more starts. One, maybe two. I think they're going to try to get him back up here to get more starts before season's end, right? If that's possible. Do you think that's possible, first of all, before I keep going?
With Senga?
One. Just one then, right?
Yeah, it would be the final couple of games of the season. That's the only chance he has.
Yeah, so you know what? I mean, if it's one, he proves that he does well in that, which again, what is that going to really show us across one start? I think
Well,
that'll earn him
it
a
depends on
spot.
what they're looking for, right? Because even if he doesn't pitch well, are they looking for something like, are they working on things down there that we're not even know, like we don't know what they're working on? Because I don't think they care about the numbers either. I think they might. I mean, there's a reason why they wanted to send him down to the minors, not just
Yeah.
because he pitched bad, it's because they see something and want him to fix it, and he probably knows it too. Because it could be something that they're looking for him to fix, and if they think it's fixed, then I guess he'll go. So
Well, I
anyway,
was saying more so the numbers of his major league start when he comes back up, not really the AAA starts. But that's what I was going to bring up. I was just like with Kodai Senga, we know what the issue is with Kodai Senga. His fastball just has sucked this year, right?
yeah.
He's not a guy that, can get swing and miss with his fastball because it's not really that lively. It's pretty straight. And when you don't expect the ghost fork to be a strike ever, right? If you're a hitter, then all you're doing is looking for that fastball and doing damage against it. And so that's really the one thing that I would hope that over his last handful of appearances in AAA that he is working on is being more effective with his fastball. We're not expecting a 5 mile per hour differential or a 3 mile per hour differential for more speed. We're expecting better, more precise locations, which I think everybody on this staff has room for improvement on, especially David Peterson as well, and some of the bullpen guys like Ryan Helsley, etc. Location with your fastball, regardless of the shape of it, the speed, the movement, whatever. That's first and foremost. So I do think Senga will, at the end of the day, whether you believe in the guy or not, I'm not saying that I do believe in him, but I think he will be one of your 3 starters in a wild card series alongside Nolan McLean. So if you're saying, and if Will Salmon is saying not David Peterson, I'm not saying that's what Will Salmon is saying, but he's saying it is not 100%. He's leaving, room and the door open for there to be another option. The only other option that I would accept is Brandon Sproat. That's the only other acceptable option that this team has. That's it. Because Clay Holmes, I'm sorry, and I know we're going to get into this game. Is anybody confident in Clay Holmes today? I'm not. I'm not confident whatsoever in Clay Holmes. So you can maybe do a piggyback sort of game for game 3 or game 2, whatever game you're not throwing Kodai Senga. That's an option. But I still think that David Peterson probably is the front runner to take one of those spots. He doesn't have ace stuff. He's a contact pitcher. But right now, with this rotation, the way it looks, you've got no other options if it's not Brandon Sproat, in my humble opinion.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you brought up. It's going to lead us right into the Clay Holmes discussion today. What if Clay Holmes and Sean Manaea pitch well, piggybacking off each other today? I'm not saying Clay Holmes goes 6 innings. I'm saying Clay Holmes pitched really good 4 innings, and Manaea pitches a really good 3 innings, and he gets 7 innings or maybe 8 innings from them combined. They're probably going to do that again in, I would say, the Cubs series most likely. I think that's maybe the end of the National Series, or maybe the beginning of the Cubs series, whenever the next time they pitch. If they pitch well, let's say the next 2 times they piggyback off each other. I mean, wouldn't you think about that for a postseason spot and just throw McLean and Sproat and maybe have somebody ready like or start Kodai Senga and maybe piggyback Sproat off of Senga or something like that? Because the only reason why I'm saying that is because if they trusted David Peterson and obviously Will Simon has probably a little bit of understanding of what's going on in the Mets clubhouse and what they're thinking. That's why I thought he brought up the Peterson thing when he was asked that. If Clay Holmes and Sean Manaea pitch well in this situation, I'm okay with it. Unfortunately, because I'd rather have just
Have they done it? Have they done it yet? Because Clay Holmes' last outing was in Philly, if I'm not mistaken, on the 10th, and they didn't. Shaman and I didn't piggyback him then. No.
No. I'm saying if they pitch well now and then they do it again in their next outing, because I'm assuming if it goes well, why change it, right? I don't think Minai is just going to go into the bullpen and just pitch whenever they need him to. I think if it works out with Clay Holmes, because Clay Holmes is the only guy right now that I'm saying can't go past the 4th inning, in my opinion. Yeah. So you would have to piggyback him.
Did they state, because I missed this, if they did state it, did they state that Manaea is coming in after Holmes today?
They did state that today, yes. For today, yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Then
they did
then
say
then
that.
yeah. Then we'll
Yeah.
see. I mean, they'll probably do it twice with Mania, the announcement of him going to the bullpen. If that's the case, if you can replicate 2 times out that Holmes can give you 3 or 4 and Mania can do the same thing, right? Then maybe that is an option. But for the sake of argument, because we haven't seen it just yet, we'll see what tonight brings. For the sake of the argument, I think the front running option at that point, if it's not David Peterson, is Brandon Sproat until Clay Holmes and Mania can be and show and prove that they're that effective duo with one opening and one coming out of the bullpen. So it's an interesting thought. It's an interesting thought.
Yeah, and also, with what David Peterson did out of the bullpen last year in the playoffs, I wonder if they're thinking about that again, because Peterson was so good coming out of the bullpen in the playoffs. Maybe that's what they're thinking as well. But again, you can't shorthand a starter in a game, in a series, just because you think he's good in the bullpen in a playoff spot. Like that's a little scary, because the time he comes in, the game might be over the way our starting pitchers have performed.
And maybe they're just trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone because they don't trust Helsley, and they're like, David Peterson might just be the 8th inning guy if the rest of the game goes well, and they're trying to play it that way. But and Ricardo actually is right. That's actually a really good point and really good memory, by the way, that Mania, I do believe, did piggyback Clay Holmes in that Kansas City series in the last series before the All-Star break,
Yeah,
and it actually went well. The Mets did end up losing that game on a walk-off, if I remember correctly, but they did look good back to back in that game. So it's definitely possible. And then you get the extra bullpen insurance there with David Peterson, who did close out a ball game, right, for the New York Mets in the playoffs, last go around. And so I think it's just absolutely ridiculous that we have to just mix and match and just find out who our 3 starters are in a wild card series. Cause I feel like if you're a true contender and if you somehow don't win your division, you gotta have 3 starters that you're like, okay, these are our guys. We're going to them. I'm pretty sure most other wildcard teams can say that they know already who their 3 starters would be, but the Mets, unfortunately, are not in that situation right now. So it could go either way. But I do agree with the premise of what Will Salmon is saying, though, Rob. This is what my one knock on David Peterson. I've been very high on David Peterson. I thought that he could take that next step. The second half of this season really hasn't gone the way that I would have envisioned it to for David Peterson. And that's why we're having this conversation, is because he really isn't a strikeout pitcher. He really is a pitch to contact pitcher. And in the playoffs, it can serve you really well, but it could also be very dangerous, which is also why even though Kodai Senga is known to be a strikeout pitcher, if that ghost fork is not landing at a respectable rate within anywhere in the vicinity of the strike zone, he is in for a world of hurt. That's why I'm like, the outlook going into a 3-game set from a pitching perspective right now, outside of Nolan McLean, is just not favorable for the New York Mets. And that's why this offense, first and foremost, has to continue just trying to find a way, for this team to go ahead and not only clinch their ticket into the postseason, but also do some damage there. I also do see, is that Strider versus Holmes? I think it's supposed to be King versus Holmes, no?
did I put Strider? Oh wow, yeah, King. I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you. Yes, it's my
I
mistake.
had
I'm
to
sorry
point
about
that
that.
out. I had to point that out.
Yeah, like I put it down there and I forgot to change it up there. I had the background for a Brave game, unfortunately, but that's all right. We all know what we're talking about, except for me. Who knows? I'm a little out of it too. But when it comes to we also would love to be talking about that at the end of season, about what the rotation is going to look like for a wild card series. Now, I also think it depends on who we play, because it's still up in the air. Like, we could still play the Dodgers. We possibly could play the Phillies, because if the Phillies don't have the best record and the Brewers do, and the Brewers are a little bit lower than the Dodgers, or we can play many teams. Put it that way. We can end up in the 2 spot in the wild card and be facing the Cubs. So there's a lot of options yet, and you're probably not going to find out until the last day of the season who we're going to be playing if we're in a playoff spot. And hopefully we're talking about a playoff preview in 2 weeks. At least let's hope. So getting into this game, obviously Clay Holmes is pitching to start, and then Manaea is piggybacking off of him. We've seen that before the All-Star break in Kansas City, as Chris said, and I forgot who said it in the comment section, but they done it before. And again, I'm assuming they're hoping it works, because if it works, why not do it again for Clay Holmes's final start and Showman's final, most likely piggyback until the playoffs. It does give the Mets a lot of options here, because if Clay Holmes and um, Showmania pitch well, I find it very hard to believe that these guys are not going to piggyback off each other in a postseason start. And somebody brought it up as well, that in a 3-game series, are you really going to go in game 1 and game 2 back to back with rookies? I find that very hard to believe. But then again, do you want to do or die game 3 with a rookie on the mound as well? It's a tough situation to be in. But you know what? Didn't the Mets put themselves in that position themselves by what the lack of what they did in the offseason and at the trade deadline? And let's be honest, because Kodai Senga has sucked and Showmania has sucked, it's partly their problem as well. But the Mets put him in this position, and they might not have any other choice. So when it comes, get Chris, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like the question that you just posed, if you would trust a rookie on the mound in a do or die game in game 3, I'm like, well, if these rookies are coming up in the later stage of the season to try to be the quote unquote saviors and try to provide a boost for this rotation, if they punch their ticket because of these rookie pitchers, yeah, you know what? They've already said that they trusted them enough to do that. You might as well go throw them out there for game 3 in a do or die situation. Pressure builds diamonds or makes diamonds, whatever you want to say. So the Mets, I think the answer here, what we're getting at, is exactly what you just said. They did it to themselves. David Stearns did this to this Mets team, and also the veterans that have not been producing also deserve equal blame, because the execution is just laughable.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, hopefully we're talking about that by end of year. But when it comes to today's game, this is an opportunity for the Mets here. They put themselves back in a situation where they control their own destiny yet again. They got a 1.5 game lead up on the Diamondbacks right now, 2 games on the Giants and Reds. We talked about the tiebreakers, talked about that and all that stuff. But Michael King, just coming back from injury not too long. I think this is his second start from injury, maybe his first. I'm not too sure, but I know he had an injury. He's just recently come back. This is a situation where the Mets have to jump on him. He's had a good season prior to injury. We know how good he is. We know how good the lineup can be for the San Diego Padres. And we also know that the Mets have had a hard time, regardless of who's pitching, regardless of who's in the lineup for the Padres. They cannot beat this goddamn Padres team. They struggle against this team. The matchup doesn't fit the Mets very well. But the Mets have to find a way to win here. There's no more, room for error anymore. And they need these games, as the Padres still do, but the Mets definitely do, because if not, and they don't turn this around and they don't keep winning, we're in for a rough 2 weeks. And Chris, what are your thoughts on the Padres here? Because they have been struggling as well, but we know the matchup doesn't really sit well on the Mets end, and it usually favors the Padres.
Well, I will say, even though Yu Darvish is pitching to over a 5 ERA, he perpetually owns the Mets, no matter what the situation is, and we are missing him in this series, which is the good news, because we all know that Yu Darvish, if nothing else, loves to wake up and pitch well against the New York Mets and then take the rest of the games off before he faces them again. But we do have to go up against Michael King, who just delivered a really solid outing. I believe it was 5 innings of 2 earned run baseball against the Reds in his first start back from injury, as Rob just said. And then game 2, the guy that not many in this fan base that I heard of wanted in the offseason because he had a qualifying offer. I was actually one of the ones that did want him, Nick Pivetta, who's pitching to under a 3 ERA. He's been fantastic in his first season as a San Diego Padres, getting the ball in game 2. And tiebreakers aside, because we did kind of go into that, I think that there's still room for the Mets to improve on their divisional record, and maybe take a tiebreaker from the Diamondbacks, because I think both of these teams have divisional opponents coming up, at least 6 games against divisional opponents. For the Mets, it's the Nationals and the Marlins to close out the season. But what I will say with this series, it's crucial because, as Rob mentioned, the second wildcard spot is still really not out of the equation. You take a series against the Padres, And then you cut their lead. I think it's 5 games right now. You make it, well, you take 2, you make it 4, somewhere around there. And then you go on a little bit of a heater over the last 9 games. I know they play the White Sox coming up, but they also do have, I believe, the Padres. Let's look at their schedule. And we're getting ahead of ourselves. We just want to take things one game at a time and just take the third wild card if possible. But let's take a look at the Padres' upcoming schedule. We all know the Mets schedule, the Cubs, the Nationals. Actually, it's the Nationals, then the Cubs, then the Marlins, and the Padres after the Mets have the White Sox, the Brewers, and the Diamondbacks. And the Diamondbacks will be playing for their season in that last series of this season. And the Brewers are also still trying to play competitive baseball because they are neck and neck with the Phillies for that first seed in the NL. So, I go back to this series being such a crucial series because we know how the Padres always perform against the Mets, like you just said, Rob. I mean, everything you just said is very valid. And I take a look at this Padres lineup and I take a look at one name in particular. It's their 5th hitter, Ramon Laureano, who Zach was a very big fan of and was really pushing hard to push that narrative of the Mets trading for Laureano because he did have some center field experience, not as much as, Cedric Mullins. It'd be a clear defensive drop off. He's thought of more as like a corner outfielder type player, but his bat has just taken off. He had a pretty decent first half in Baltimore, and he's had a really good second half in a Padres uniform to be a catalyst for that already explosive offense. So I'm curious what your take on this is because the Mets had a stretch there for about a month and a half where Vientos was heating up. Soto's doing what Soto's doing. I mean, just a historical season for him with the overall numbers. Brandon Nimmo was looking like he was getting back to business. Jeff McNeil, I know that he was, has struggled over the past week, but he was doing well for quite some time there over about a month to a month and a half stretch. He's having a decent season overall, but I'm talking about when the offense finally decided to wake up. What is your confidence level in this offense moving forward with what you've seen over the past 7 to 8 games? Have you seen a noticeable decline? Obviously, they're not putting up crooked numbers anymore with the bats, but do you think that this offense still looks like the aggressive version of this offense that we saw a couple of weeks ago during their hot stretch in August, I would say? Or do you think that this offense is kind of concerning you again? Because Michael King and Nick Pivetta are no joke going on the mound in game 1 and game 2. And I forgot who their third pitcher is going against Tong in game 3, but he's also having a pretty respectable season. Just looking at the overall numbers, I really do think that this is a series where this offense at home in front of the home crowd, it's going to be electric. It's going to be a playoff sort of environment before the playoffs actually hit. This is something where the offense can take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and really put it to the Padres because they're going to need a lot of runs early and often. And the name and the strategy of the game here for the Mets, and it always has been, they've been failing to do this many times, get the lead early. And it seems like the Mets never want to do that. So I'm curious about your perspective. How would you grade this offense as of recent over the past 10 games or so?
Well, they definitely haven't been good. They did, the last 2 games they did give them leads and the pitching blew it. So they didn't have again. I think too many people are focused on the 7 runs per game that they were doing for the last 30 plus days prior to the last 10, where 7 runs per game is not sustainable. It's just not. No offense is going to do that. Good offenses are going to range from 5.5 to 6 runs per game, around that area. That's usually a really good offense. That is where most teams are, even the good lineups. The issue with, I think, a lot of with the Mets in general, where from Mets perspective, the Mets fans' perspective is that they expect 7 runs per game, and when they score 4 runs, people are like, why didn't you score 6? Like at times when your lineup gives you a lead, you can't always be concerned that your pitching is always going to blow the lead. Like you're going to have to win 2-1 games, 3-2 games, a game like the last game against the Rangers, where you had to take it to extra innings, a low-scoring game, turned into the Mets winning it. That has been far and few between over the last couple of months. The Mets haven't been winning low-scoring games or even close games, because no matter what the runs the Mets put up, it always seems like the pitching gave up more. So I think it. I don't think the lineup has been as good, obviously, since the prior 30 days, but I'm still confident in them. Juan Soto is still very hot. Pete Alonso, I am hoping that home run gets Pete Alonso going, because if you can get Juan Soto and Pete Alonso going, that's a really tough three 2-3 in the lineup that you have to worry about. And all you need is somebody else to get going as well. And Brandon Nimmo had a home run in the second game that made it a 2-0 game as well, and that's something that you hope gets him going as well. But if you can get Pete Alonso going and Juan Soto going, I think it's going to be fine with this lineup. And we all know what Lindor can do. Lindor has been struggling as well, but I'm not too worried about the lineup, because I feel like they haven't been not putting up any runs. They've been putting up some, but I still worry about the pitching, because I don't trust them with any lead. That's the problem. Like, we can have a 3-0 lead today, and it's the sixth inning, and I'm very concerned. And yeah, you can say, oh, well, you need insurance runs. Well, Juan Soto hit a home run the other day that made it 2-0. It was a solo home run, but it was late in the game, and it was 2-0, and the Mets still blown that lead. So concerning of the lineup, no. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to get the big hit. I think they will put up a good amount of runs. I don't think anybody can be mad if you put up 4 runs today. You put up 4 runs today, you should win a ball game. I'm sorry. I think that's not asking a lot for the pitching to minimize the Padres to 3 runs. If you can't do that, then how do you expect to win games? Because this team hasn't won many low-scoring games or close games in a while, because their pitching wouldn't allow it. So, am I uber confident in the lineup? I'm not going to say yes, because there is some, flaws that worry me still when it comes to, Cedric Mullins, who, again, he's got to play because Siri's terrible, and you don't have Tyrone Taylor right now. So, it comes down to Alvarez picking it up and Lindor picking it up, and Vientos getting back to where he was a couple of weeks ago. That's where we need him to be. And I think this lineup is too good to just not do what they have to do. But I'm not completely concerned, because I just feel like I trust them a little bit more than I do the pitching. So, yeah, I guess to answer your question, I think the lineup, I think we're okay.
Yeah, I would not be as concerned with the lineup either, although I do take a look at that Tyrone Taylor injury. And I'm like, I understand it's just Tyrone Taylor, but with the way that Mullins is going right now, I mean, it's just brutal. I mean, his just that addition at the deadline is basically for nothing. I mean, he's not doing anything. I'd almost rather just see Jeff McNeil in center field at this point. Oh, you don't want that?
No, he blew that Phillies game. That pissed me off to the. You know what? Listen, I talked about this. A couple of months ago when McNeil was coming.
We did have that conversation.
I said he's gonna blow a game. He's gonna misjudge a ball that's gonna be in a big game. And again, did it matter? Because the Phillies probably were gonna win that game anyway. The Phillies were just on another level in that series. But I never yelled so hard in my life when Jeff McNeil misplayed that ball, because that's a ball you need to catch. And again, 99% of the time, any normal center fielder would catch that ball. And
I agree.
Maybe they would misjudge it too, but more likely than not, they wouldn't. I think that you can't allow that to happen. Playing guys out of position. I know McNeil has been more than serviceable. He's been probably above average. But playing guys out of position in crucial times when they preach defense and they preach, run prevention, and you're going to put guys out of position, you're looking for trouble, in my opinion. Like, I don't want to. I know the offense isn't that good, but leave Mullins out there if Siri sucks and Tyrone Taylor is not available. If Tyrone Taylor is available, I don't want to see Mullins. But in game 1, if there's a righty on the mound, Mullins is starting. Just so everybody knows that. Mullins is going to start.
I know that he is. But I think that I personally, and I don't think a lot of Mets fans can take too much more of what he's doing at the plate, unfortunately. He's just a net zero right now at the plate. And it's unfortunate because, we didn't really expect, or at least we shouldn't have expected much from him at the plate, but we should not also have expected him to be this bad. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
nobody did.
bad. It's bad. And so you take a look at the pros and the cons of McNeil making mistakes in center field versus trying to strengthen the lineup, and then you have to make your decision accordingly if you're Carlos Mendoza. But outside from that, we just got to pray at this point. I know it's absolutely pathetic that we have to even do this, because when we talked about this team earlier on in the season, we're talking about and net minus zero CP's little no show. Yeah, I agree. Salute to Ray. But when we were talking about this team earlier on in this season, we were talking about Tyrone Taylor should be a fourth outfielder with some platoon starts, not an everyday starter. Now, just like last season when he took off and won the job over Harrison Bader, we're praying for Tyrone Taylor to be out there on an everyday basis when he comes back from injury. Hopefully it's soon. And I think that is a bigger concern within itself from the roster construction perspective of this team moving forward into the offseason when we get here. But at this point, man, 12 games left to go. They have to claw their way until the very end. Hopefully they can do something great, because it's going to be, if I'm not mistaken, 12 games left, 6 at home in a row, and then 6 away on the road in Chicago and Miami to end the season, right? I'm pretty sure that's how it works out for the Mets. So
Say that again. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that last part.
six at home against the Padres and Nationals, and then 6 on the road between Chicago and Miami.
Correct.
Yeah. And I just look at that Miami series against the Marlins,
We
and I'm
know.
like,
We already know it's coming down to
oh
that.
boy, here we go again.
We know. Of course. We already look. We could have talked about this a month ago. We knew this was gonna happen. We knew. Look, we never get anything we want as Met fans, right? We don't get the players we want at the trade deadline. We don't get the actual guys we want in the offseason. We don't get to smooth sail to a playoffs during the regular season where we could be chilling the last 2 weeks of the season. No. We're not allowed to do that, right? They love heartbreak. They love heartache. They love stressful moments for this. Not only do we have to worry about our terrible football teams, there's no basketball yet. There's no hockey yet. Now the Mets are just causing more problems, and we don't have a break at all. Like, football season is over already. It's great. Lovely. And now we got to worry about the Mets, holding on for dear life so we can actually have a postseason and something to talk about in October. That's exciting, because our football teams are not exciting. So,
hockey will be here and then be gone too with the Rangers, and the only thing that we really have to look forward to is a potential Knicks championship run. That's really it, and it's unfortunate. But
hey, see the Rangers.
Imagine saying that years ago.
That's funny. The Rangers named the captain, right?
Oh, I didn't see that. I didn't see the news.
Yeah. So it was our trade deadline after JT Miller.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
I know, of course. God forbid giving to anybody who's actually been there, but all right, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's trade let's trade, Kreider, and then, all right. Sorry, guys, we got well off track, but that's all right. Who cares, right? I'm saying, like, the Mets need to win, and we'll be happy. That's all we need to know. That's all we need to know when it comes to what's going to happen. So, yeah, Chris.
I'll say though, all this conversation aside, I'm excited for tonight. I mean, it's just another opportunity for the Mets to prove us wrong. It's another opportunity for the Mets to go out there and prove themselves, and kind of, make things as right as possible with this season going so wrong up until this point. 77 and 73 is not acceptable, but by, I don't know, whether it's like magic or just whatever you want to call it, they're here in a playoff spot and they control their own destiny, and they have another opportunity to go out there and prove themselves to this fan base and this front office. And did you actually hear what David Stearns had to say about the deadline and his deadline moves? I know you don't care. I know you don't care, but it was just funny.
I close my ears when he talks, because again, this guy needs to be a politician. That's what he needs to be, because he tells bullshit. He just loves to hear what his constituents want to hear. And then when you actually vote for him, he does none of that. And that's exactly what he's doing. He says whatever he wants to say to make everybody sound like he knows what he's doing and, make Met fans happy. And then he does the exact opposite. So, yeah, he said something about Cedric Mullins in regards to, Cedric Mullins is struggling because he's on a new team. Like, yeah, that's what happens at the trade deadline. You get new players. I don't know. Did he say
Yeah.
something else stupid?
No, I mean, he was just saying it was kind of a hindsight is 2020 kind of thing. He said that he definitely would have done things differently if he had known what he knows now. And my thing is that you knew the rotation at the deadline by the deadline, the way that it was headed. Like that was like the answer was already there for you. And he's just
Yeah.
like, he thought they did the best that they could do given the information that it's just whatever. It's
I
just
mean, if he would have just said, I didn't want to give up any of my top 6 prospects, I would have been like, thank you for telling me the truth. That's
yeah,
it.
that
That's
would have
all I
been a
want to
better
hear.
answer.
Like, I don't want to hear, oh, sustained success and we're looking for a championship, but you half-ass a deadline and don't give up what you need to give up to be better. And, I'm not saying that you had to give up all 6 of your top prospects, but you could have done better. Like, hindsight is 2020, sure. But, I mean, the writing was on the wall, like you said, with the rotation. Not a lot of people wanted Bader back. There was not a lot of people who did, right? Because Bader lost his job last year against Tyrone Taylor last year. So let's not act like Met fans were clamoring only for Harrison Bader. And obviously, more of us, me and you, Chris, were trying to clamor for Luis Robert as well. So it's unfortunate, but we can't do anything about it now. So him talking about this on September 16th is idiotic to me. And I know he was asked the question, but you failed. This is the reason why these 3 kids are up in this rotation, right? They don't deserve to be put in this spot. Worst case scenario, you could have had a September call up in Nolan McLean. If that's the way it should have been. Now, you can't predict what Minaya was going to do and suck when he came back and Kodai Senga fall apart, in the middle of the year, along with injuries. But if you really thought these kids were that good and your plan was to bring these kids or at least 2 of them up, they would have been here in June and you wouldn't have cared about draft pick and rookie statuses. So, I guarantee you nobody asked him a question about that because the media is afraid to do it and ask him, why do you care about draft picks and rookie status? So, yeah, David Stearns is, a ghost to me right now, just like saying his ghost fork. He's just irrelevant at this point.
Well, we'll have a lot of conversations about David Stearns and the whole philosophy this offseason, I'm sure. I'm sure. I mean, be prepared for those conversations.
They better make the playoffs, man.
I agree. According to Martino, as of like 2 minutes ago, the Mets need another right-handed reliever in late inning high leverage spots. David Stern said today that all options were on the table. Among the logical candidates, Clay
Ross.
Holmes, Brandon Sproat, and Kodai Senga.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
what? I'm actually happy that Clay Holmes is in consideration. I would love to see Clay Holmes in that situation. I think that's the best suited situation for Clay Holmes. This whole, again, he hasn't been terrible as a starter, but he's just not reliable. He's not reliable for me. And I'm not saying that he can't be reliable in year 2 next year, but with what the Mets need right now, Clay Holmes should be in the bullpen. I'm sorry, that's just the fact of the matter. So we'll see how it goes. There's going to be a lot of shakeups here over the next 12 games. Senga's going to be back up. I bet you another guy's going to go to the bullpen. Maybe somebody gets sent down like Jonah Tong. I don't know. Do you think, my last question to you before we round this out, do you think Tong is going to go down if he struggles today? Or not today, in game 3 of this series?
Um,
I don't know if they can afford to do that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, I would just piggyback him of somebody else. Like, I don't think you can. I don't think you can because he has potential. And I know we're talking about potential in desperate measures here to win games, but I mean, until Kodai Senga comes back, he's not going anywhere. So yeah, he might come off the roster for a few days, but he's already postseason eligible if they take him off the roster. So if they're going to need him or use him in the postseason, maybe they'll take him off the roster for Senga's one start in the Cubs or Marlins series and then bring him back. But yeah, I don't even know. Like, would I do it? No. Honestly, I would keep him on the roster somehow, some way, even if it's got to be in the bullpen. But I'm glad also that Clay Holmes might be going to the bullpen because that should have happened already too. But I don't know, man. Like there's so much crap up in the air, and I'd love to be talking about, and this is the problem, Chris. And people might be frustrated why we really haven't talked much about the game, is because there's too much going on outside the game that is going to affect these games. That's the problem. Like, we got Clay Holmes and Manaea, who's supposed to be mainstays in this rotation, piggybacking off each other. There's still, we just found out about the rotation for the next 2 games in Peterson and Tong, but look at the rest of the series. We have no idea. We don't know if Tong's going to get another start. We have no idea when Senga's coming back up. Clay Holmes could go to the bullpen, as David Stern says. Like, we have no idea. This is the problem. And we shouldn't have so many question marks. 12 games left in the season, and we also have to win a lot of those games. That's a lot to ask for. But the Mets have to do it, or they're going to get killed. They're going to get you. You're going to waste a historical season from Juan Soto, best season as a Met ever. The only other guy other than Barry Bonds to have a 40-30 season, and we're going to waste that. You can't waste years of Juan Soto not being in the playoffs. This guy lives for the playoffs. You pay all that money because of what he does in the playoffs. Same thing goes for Lindor as well. Like, you can't keep on wasting years of these guys, especially Lindor, because he's clutch in the postseason. That's when they perform the best. This is why you pay those guys. And even a small sample size of Pete Alonso has good numbers in the postseason. You can't waste those years and not have those guys in the postseason doing damage. That is when they rise to the occasion. That's why you pay those guys. So, man, listen, I hope they make it, because I really want to be talking about missing the playoffs and then, complaining about all the shit that I've been complaining about all season, because I want to talk about a playoff series or a couple. That's what I want to talk about, Chris. So any final thoughts before we call it a pregame? You're doing a postgame tonight?
I'll decide if I'm doing a post game within the next hour. So it's on the fence. I'm actually waiting for Nick to respond. If he could do a post game too. I will see if I can do it. I have a couple of things to do before the game starts, but it's TBD. So for those of you all who are subscribed to this channel, if you aren't actually subscribed, make sure to subscribe and also turn on notifications, because I'll probably have it set in the background. And if we are a go mid-game, then I'll put it up and we'll do a post-game. So keep an eye out on. If not, at the bare minimum, I would love to do one tomorrow, but things happen. I'm happy I'm just a part of this stream right here at the amount of time that I miss. So outside of that, post-game, TBD tonight. It's really 50-50. This do or die time. It's now or never, Rob. It starts tonight against the Padres. No better time, and really no better opponent than a team that has pretty much whooped your ass time and time again in the meetings leading up to this series. So the crowd's going to be electric. I have no doubt about that. Go out there and perform. And Clay Holmes, just give us something to work with. Keep it respectable in this offense. I'm sure will do its thing.
Yep, absolutely. You know what? Your final homestand of the year, the final 6 games at home, go out at home for the regular season with a bang. Steve Cohen called out the fans to show up. Over 3 million fans have showed up at Citi Field, and it's time to show them that everything they did and come out there for, you actually cared about and showed and respected. Go out there. Do it for your fans. 6 games left in the homestand before the season home games are done. And let's go out with a bang at home, guys. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to the Amazing Mets pregame show right here on the channels and on X. Look out for that post game if Chris does it later tonight, guys. But hopefully we're talking about a Mets W either tonight or tomorrow on the pregame, guys. Have a good night, guys. Let's go Mets, and enjoy the game.
Seven train rumble, headed to the field. Orange and blue vibes, the energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, repping both hoods. Rob and CP.